Hi, I'm Moira,
I'm Gloria.
and this is our IDM model. So our compelling question is, does the United States people care about women's rights? So we really wanted to go deeper into it and see what the difference is between just regular human rights and then women's rights with that. So for some supporting activities that we would do beforehand would be comparing women's wages to men's wages, and then comparing women's jobs to men's jobs, just to see the difference, really. And then for our first lesson, we would talk about what is women's rights and what it really means, kind of deal. So for the activity that we would do, we would have post-it notes that every kid would have, and then they would talk about what it is and what's the difference between different rights and stuff like that. And then all together we would go about it and look into it and see what similarities people said, and then make an anchor chart saying all the things that went along with it. And then we would have artwork that we would look at and links and things that we have that we can describe later with you guys. And yeah, so that's just an introduction of it, so we get more vocabulary involved with it. And lesson 2 would be, do women's rights differ within races? Just to see, does women's rights differ, I guess, in general. So we would look at first-person interviews and compare women's rights with different races. Then they would create a bubble map chart to compare 3 different races. So we would provide the interview questions and the interview videos, so they have something to reference, of course. And that would be the second activity. And then for the third day lesson, it would be, how do you make sure the women's get, start over. How do we make sure women get their rights? And then for this one, this is kind of creating a Bill of Rights in their own way. So they would get all the information from the past days and create their own plan of action and create the Women's Bill of Rights. And then they would, create it as a partner or as individuals, whatever they feel like to do. Oh, and this is also going to be for 5th graders. Definitely didn't say that earlier, but yeah. Let me scroll down.
Okay, so for summative performance tasks, a big argument would be, what does it mean to be equal? They would construct an argument, detail outline, posters, essays that discuss the issues women faced in 19th century, and they choose to continue even to face today. They'd use claims, evidence, historical sources, and acknowledging the different views. For an extension, what they'd do is they'd rewrite lyrics to a popular present-day song from the perspective of a 19th century woman's rights activist. This will get them really engaged because children love music, so they can pick one of their favorite songs and they can do a different perspective and understand women's rights even today versus back in 19th century. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then this is gonna be our lesson template kind of deal. So for the focus of it, of course, it'd be how people view women's rights, and then how does it affect the United States? That's what we really wanted to impact the most with these kids. And yeah.
So for the opening here, for getting their prior knowledge, we want the students to answer the question, what exactly are women's rights? We use the post-it note and the anchor chart to help them be engaged in the discussion, as well as understand what their prior knowledge would be to it. For the anticipatory set, the students will participate in the whole group discussion, talking about their thoughts, even their concerns regarding women's rights. This will engage the students to not only understand their own opinion possibly and be able to voice it, but also listen and learn from their peers about what they see or how their backgrounds were.
And the whole point of this IDM model is just to have a collaborative discussion with it and just see other people's point of views and to learn off that, of course, what Gloria said. And then so yeah, we would break up these lessons into modeling, so that would be our post-it note activity that I said earlier. And then for the guided practice, it would be the interview questions and talking about how, with the knowledge that they had before, they could act on it and actually make a bubble map and all that on their own. And then independent practice would be the creating of the plan with the Bill of Rights for women. Yeah.
For formative assessments, methods and tools, the first assessment will be the student's ability to write an appropriate answer on their anchor chart during their post-it note activity about what do they think women's rights are. They'll be assessed over their explanation of their answer during the whole group discussion. This will help actually understand their prior knowledge of it. They'll be obsessed on their understanding of comparing and contrasting women's rights within their races on their bubble chart that they make during the second lesson activity. Because they'll do this as independent practice, so you'll be able to see how they differ between the races of women's rights. And for their Women's Bill of Rights project, they'll be obsessed on a rubric that talks about content, design, and the resources that they used, as well as their participation in the group, making sure that their content is accurate, making sure that they're participating within the group, making sure that it looks nice and neat and everything. The rubric is provided within the lesson. Grouping structure that they'll be first organize and participate in that whole group discussion. They'll watch the videos as a group, they'll use the anchor chart as a group, but then they'll work independently to create those bubble maps to better assess their understanding of what we've been talking about in class. But lastly, they would work in partners to create their Women's Bill of Rights.
Exactly. And of course, these assessments will be accommodated or modified when needed. And for the accommodations, they would be able to talk to partners and like a lot of peer work involving that, and they would receive extra time if they need any. And yeah, we would close in groups and just talk about it more so people understand. And then for the modifications that would be made for other friends in the lesson is that the students do not need to add any ideas to the anchor chart, but rather listen to their ideas. So they don't physically have to write it. They can just orally talk or just listen, as I said before. And yeah, that's our activity. And yeah, women's rights rock.